an underground silo, a test firing in California, a weapon first developed in the 1950s. It's still the nation's front-line nuclear weapon, designed to carry an atomic warhead deep into enemy territory. 400 Minuteman missiles are still buried in underground silos in 5 states. They dot the northern Great Plains like a pincushion. But the last major upgrade was 50 years ago when Richard Nixon was president.
You can't indefinitely life extend anything.
Which brings this story home to Utah.
Very old technology, and now and then you have to replace things that are that old.
Senator Mitt Romney is a strong supporter of what's happening on the fence line just outside Hill Air Force Base. The Northrop Grumman Company is gearing up to build a fleet of 400 brand new missiles.
So we have a 50-year-old weapon system trying to defend against 21st century threats.
They're creating 5 big new buildings for engineering and testing. They'll actually build the missiles, although not the nuclear warheads, at the old Thiokol Rocket Works in Box Elder County. The new ICBMs will be deployed in the same pincushion of silos, which Northrop Grumman will redesign and rebuild. And the jobs? Oh yes, lots of them.
But here in northern Utah, we'll generate about 5,000 jobs. We have about 1,300 today. And we're hiring about 100 a month.
The price tag is enormous, officially $95 billion, but some critics say it could be much higher. Henry Sokolsky has spent his career on nuclear policy issues, mostly from a conservative, sometimes Republican point of view, and he's concerned about it.
The critics of the program are, up in arms about how much the thing costs.
Economics professor Gail Blattenberger says it's like funding a bridge to nowhere.
We're spending this huge amount of money for something that we don't need and is of no benefit.
Utah's new Congressman Blake Moore supports it.
When you're investing in something that's creating jobs, modernizing our technology, there's a lot of positive benefits that come from this. And so it's an overall net positive.
And keeping the nation safe from nuclear attack, in my opinion, is probably as high a priority as we possibly could have.
But the debate about dollars is only part of the controversy, and perhaps the least important part of the debate. A bigger question is whether ground-based missiles ready to fire on a few minutes' notice make the nation safer or less safe.
It's too easy to make mistakes, and that has definitely happened. A lot.
For 2/3 of a century, nuclear nations have relied on mutual deterrence. Each side knows if one side triggers a nuclear war, the other side will retaliate, and both sides will be destroyed. The U.S. has long relied on the so-called nuclear triad, bombers, submarines, and silos, each with enough atomic weapons to assure our enemies we will always be able to retaliate.
And through the 3 layers of the triad, it creates an opportunity for diplomacy. It creates an opportunity to ensure deterrence.
Making sure that we're overall safer because of it.
So are you personally convinced that it's kept us out of wars?
Yes, I am. The ability to have a strong presence that kind of don't mess with us type of presence will reduce conflict, and I think we've seen that over time.
But some experts say that thinking is no longer valid for ground-based missiles. Electronic targeting is now so precise and accurate, they say, a determined enemy could wipe out all 400 missiles in a few minutes.
Back in the 60s, those reinforced silos were so hard, and the Soviet missiles aimed at them were so inaccurate that they could ride out an attack. That's not likely to be the case now.
If there's a warning of enemy attack, critics worry we'd be tempted to strike first in a use 'em or lose 'em policy. Strategic Commander Admiral Charles Richard recently testified such a policy does not exist.
He's been clear that we do not have a launch on warning policy here at the United States and never have had one.
In private, I get people telling me that, of course, that's our policy.
Sokolsky thinks a better deterrent might be to base missiles in concealed locations, possibly moving them around unpredictably in underground tunnels. But supporters of siloed missiles think it's highly unlikely an enemy would try a first strike to wipe them all out.
It would almost take a double strike on each particular one of all the silos that exist. It'd be very, very difficult to do that.
The debate in some form has been going on almost as long as we've had nuclear missiles, so Utah's huge role will likely remain controversial as long as the money, defense contracts, and jobs keep flowing. John Hollenhorst, KSL 5 News, Hill Air Force Base.